Thank you, Spase. Good morning, everyone. Today is Father's Day. Aunt Catherine actually asked me to speak for the sake of today. And I just wanted to share you my experience with my physical father, and by extension, true father. And although you probably know me briefly, I have yet to share my course because my life is kind of a mix of 9 years in Japan during my middle school and high school years up till 20, and the rest in the States here. So before we start, I would just like to share some scripture with you. Okay. You can follow along or read along with me. Why do we have brothers and sisters? Why do we need brothers and sisters? It is because with brothers and sisters, boys can watch their younger sisters and elder sisters, and from them, learn how their mothers grew up. And girls can watch their naughty older brothers and younger brother, and from them, learn how their fathers grew up. This is called the love of brothers and sisters. So, you should love your siblings. Also, you should learn to love your siblings as you love your father and mother. You cannot love them if you don't learn how. So, through watching your brothers and sisters, you learn how your parents grew up, and you come to love them as your parents do. In this way, you will be able to love your mother and father even after you go to the next world. You need your brothers and sisters in order to be an owner of love without shame. Then, would it be better for brothers and sisters to love each other more than their parents or less than their parents? It is better that they love one another more. Why is that so? Because watching and loving your siblings is like watching and loving your mother and father when they were growing up. When you do this, it fulfills the condition of loving your parents from their birth to death. So these brothers and sisters are connected to each other through such love. That's why I think this way. This is Father's words. Then, in the case of the parents, the more children they have, the more they can learn about their spouses. For example, in the case of the mother, as she sees her son grow up, she could think, oh, that is probably how my husband was when he was growing up. So, loving the children is essentially the same as loving the husband the way he was before she met him. Also, the husband could think, my wife would have been like this daughter. She is showing me how her mother was when she was young. And so, he will learn from her. Through loving the children, he fulfills the condition of loving every aspect of his wife. The mother and father do not say, let us love only the boys and not the girls. They love their sons and daughters equally without discrimination. So by having sons and daughters, a beautiful circle of love in the family is formed. The mother and father will treat the children equally. All parents are like this, so hating your brother or sister is a greater sin than hating your mother. This is the first rule in family education. This is from the CSC Chun Sung-gyung, and it's dated 1988, so pretty way back. He's been saying this. I would like to share a different part about filial piety. What is a child of filial piety? It is a person who, in order to take responsibility for the parent's sorrow, seeks out the difficult places and fulfills his responsibility, thereby bringing joy to his parents. If the parents have done 10 loads of work and the child has made effort to do 15 loads, the parents will feel joy that corresponds to 5 loads. The one who makes effort serving the parents and thinking how to fulfill such a supplementary amount is a child of filial piety. What do you think God wants from his children? Is it for them to make a lot of money and become millionaires? Is it to be the president holding the most power in the country? What God wanted from his son and daughter, Adam and Eve, was for them to grow up to be children of filial piety, patriots, saints, and divine sons and daughters. Amen. Aju. So what I just shared was something that resonated with me strongly throughout my course, and I just wanted to give the parallels that I've experienced with my physical father and true father from this beginning of my life to, I guess, until now. So at the same time, I can share you about myself a little more because it's kind of hard for me to share that sometimes, but also why I feel so passionate about some aspects of our movement. So I was born in the United States of America, in the state of Idaho, the state of Nepal, in 92, 24th of May. And I moved when I was 1 to Seattle. And then when I was 3, I moved to Massachusetts. And then I moved again when I was 6 to New Hampshire, Fort Smith, New Hampshire. And for the majority of my elementary years, I was there. And I remember spending time with the New Hampshire community, which includes the Tassies, the Dumonts, the Fairbrothers, the Shinishis. They're downstairs. And we had a lot of fun times as I was growing up, and I always would visit them. And through those years, that was basically my whole entire life with my physical father. So my father is, as maybe some of you might have already known, is a very quiet person. However, he, to me at least, was probably the best father that I could ever have had. This rings true to me after so much has passed, especially when he passed away in 2004. He was a very quiet but also internally driven person and would always just stand by for me. And if I ask any questions, I would always remember him helping me with anything. And he would be the one to always give me and my younger sister the best education as possible. And he would be the one to be in charge of the restaurant for our church. And he took responsibility, I believe, in the Boston Sakurabana, which I'm not sure if it's in our ownership anymore, but and there was one also called Sakura in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And so after, when I became 11 and a half, there was this moment when my family told me and my sister, my parents told me and my sister that we had to go back to Japan. And this was something that I did not expect. We were told that it was just a summer vacation plan or something. And we moved to Japan with my cousin's family, which was actually the family that witnessed my mother. And we started to spend time together. However, after a couple of months and weeks, I started to notice my father kind of declining in health. He started to wear a mask that kind of was stuck to kind of like a tank of oxygen. And I just knew that something was definitely going on. After he caught a cold, and it was carried to the hospital by the ambulance on Christmas night, 2003, I knew that my father was in a very ill condition. And 40 days after that day, he ascended to the spirit world. So after my father passed, I started to think, what did I know about my father? What did I do for my father that I could have helped, even though I was 12 years old and very young, and my mother assumably thought that I was too young to really cope or understand the situation. I started to think after my father's passing about understanding what my father did to me, for me, and I just felt so much love and what he left for me, and understood that for a family, for the owner of a family, you have to leave more. You have to leave something more than what was there before. And without giving any words to me and without any direct directions to me, my father gave me a very clear message about how much he cared about his life for us and his family. And I realized a lot that he entered this movement for the sake of wanting to have a family. So after we moved to Japan, I started to adapt to my new environment. Although I'm ethnically Japanese, I did not know a lot of kanji. I did not know how to really communicate in their social norms, which there's certain formalities in the language. And that was a big struggle for me, especially with also coping with the loss of a loved one and also having not much financial stability within the family. However, after a couple of years, after 3 or 4 years, I started to catch up to my peers, and I was able to get accepted to a high school. And basically by then my Japanese was caught up, my reading was caught up. I was pretty much in the school, in my high school at least, I was probably the smartest student there. And that's when I started to go to church, when I realized a lot of my church brothers and sisters and the culture of heart, basically loving each other as real brothers and sisters regardless of physical bloodlines and whatnot. And ever since I started thinking about my father passing and what he has done for me and my family, I felt kind of the same compassion towards my brothers and sisters in Japan. And it's interesting because at least in the Western culture, there isn't a specific word for elder brother or younger brother, or we're just brothers and sisters, right? And sometimes Asian culture does have its little quirks where you have to respect your older, respect your higher, but this felt different. This felt very, very genuinely different because your younger brothers, your younger sisters will look up to you and say "hyung," "oppa," and then you will look down on the younger members, but not in terms of taking advantage of them, just with love, and you look at them as younger brothers and sisters. And as an elder brother, as first son in my family, my physical family as well, I kind of felt what being an elder sibling is like. Basically, that is the step where you start to understand your parent's heart, right? You start to try and become more like a parent. And in that sense, I started to feel, not just because through the struggles and pain that I went through, but also the struggles and pain that the Japanese community was going through. And I'm not really, this isn't really something for me to put out forward. But the situation in Japan, in the church community, at least up to the point where I was, is very, very different from what we have here, where we kind of, we're okay, we're kind of alive, right? And maybe some things have happened, but there was a lot of more pressure about donations. There was a lot of more pressures about the Cain and Abel stuff. There was a lot of I don't want to say drama, but there was a lot of stuff that also the second gen, the BCs, also just in general, the kids who grew up in the church had struggles with, because the parents would just be not there just for the sake of the church. The moms would just go out all day long and not come back. Also, the kids wouldn't have much, again, financial stability. So in a weird sense, I felt like there are, even though I am struggling, I felt like I wasn't the only one. I wasn't like, there were so many cases where it could have been so much more worse, actually, because there was also struggles between the parent and the child. And I just felt like very, not responsible, but I just wanted to help. And through those memories, I would just go out and hang out with brothers, and like that in itself actually played a big role in terms of my younger brother's maturity, apparently. It's kind of embarrassing to say, but I have probably one or two brothers who I kind of been with when they were growing up. They were very difficult middle schoolers. They would punch everything. But I would just take it. But now he's like 20. He has a full-time job. He cares for his community as well. And he's probably a lot more mature than I am, actually. I haven't really changed, unfortunately. But in that sense, it was a weird kind of pride that I had for my younger brother. And I can only wish that my father and true father would have that kind of same sense of pride and being proud of myself and each and every one of us. I feel that ever since I've started going to church and hanging out with my brothers, that was how it always kind of went. We just did stupid things, and we just... There's always that person in church, right, who would always say that vertical stuff. So I was just like completely out of that context and be like, just do very horizontal stuff. And as you might imagine, the Japanese community is very vertical. So it was a very nice, refreshing experience, I guess, for the youth community in Japan, for me to be there. And I wasn't really trying to be that kind of person to change anyone's life. It was just me wanting to have fun, and I felt accepted because of my difference in background of being born here. There was some little friction between me and some people in Japan when they find out that I'm not originally from my native country. But because of the culture of heart, I felt very connected and accepted, and at the same time I wanted to accept anyone who would understand that. So further going along, I became, my second year of high school, the vice president, or vice leader of my church's community's youth. I took the junior SCF program, as Spase has mentioned in his country as well, that it still exists in that name. I mean, they're just different names, I believe. We have similar contents in many other countries as well. And that is when I started to realize about the importance of understanding the DP. And with a little bit of setbacks because of how hard it could be to understand that DP with the language that I haven't been accustomed to fully yet. I had some of my struggles, but I was able to become like the first place in writing and kind of exploring like the different aspects of the DP with how we should love each other, and basically being able to apply that knowledge to our lifestyle. I was very surprised because I had that kind of setback, but felt very proud at the same time. It wasn't something that I said to everyone, but those were some of the things that I was surprising myself. So further moving onwards, a couple years after that, I graduated, of course, and I started working, and I didn't really have a very clear direction. And I think it's my tendency to be very indecisive sometimes, and maybe some of you can see that. But I was thinking during my age of 19, 20, I wanted to be very clear about my direction, and I didn't want to make any regrets in terms of my life decision because of some of the things happening or what happened to my life. So I just wanted to make the best out of it. And I started wondering more about my father. And as I was doing that, I started to do some English school, like lessons. Started to teach English to my younger brothers and sisters. I also kind of started to plan to have some kind of a band. I did a little bit of music in Japan. And also I was kind of doing some artwork, some comic artwork, manga pretty much. And I was actually talking to some people in Shueisha, which is the most famous selling publisher of comics. And I was kind of all over the place, but doing a lot of things. And then I came to the point where I went to the 21-day workshop in Japan, which kind of, I guess, gives you the certification of being an official member of the church. And that is when I realized a lot about how my father really loved me. Because even up till that point, I still had some of my hiccups and trying to recover spiritually about who I am and what we're doing here, basically. And I was talking to my presumable Abel, but he was a very nice Abel. He was a very nice person. He was a very kind of very, very funny. He would just try and teach us the DP, but not in like a very lectural way, but like we would have, baths, like public baths in Japan, but he would just come in the public bathroom. He'll take out a hose and then like spray cold water at us. And then he'll be like, go into the tub. We all went to the tub. And then he would like take out 7 like 100-yen coins, right? And he would just throw it in to the bathtub, right? And then he said, well, Father found the divine principle, the truth, in the probability of finding one speck of sand in the whole entire ocean. So you guys go in there with one breath, find that 100 yen, and then we couldn't do it. So he was that kind of person. He was like really funny. He was fun. He was always outgoing, optimistic. He felt a lot of pride in our movement and becoming a pastor and becoming a lecturer as his profession, and that was very refreshing for me. And then he would talk about my life, basically, about like what is your struggles. And through that interaction, I really found out about how my father really loved me, because he wouldn't talk, right? But I would remember my mother telling me that he was the happiest guy on earth, taking pictures of me when I was a baby. Of course, I'm pretty sure a lot of parents would take naked pictures of your baby. But my quiet father would be so energized and happy, and like every single day, it's just the same, me, but like he would take pictures of me, and then my mother would be like, oh, okay, kind of almost like that kind of level of like love and passion. And I just felt like, oh wow, like I didn't realize that, but love was already there. So going on forward after that, I started wanting to learn more about my father as much as I could. And I have, I guess, a couple of stories, but one is that my father was actually a second gen of a different church, which was has risen up in the similar era of this church. It was called the Soka Gakkai, which is a Japanese new religion based on Buddhism, I think. And he would actually have the same kind of experience as a lot of, I guess, what we had in terms of his mother, my grandmother, would be out and working for the church. and he would have a lonely experience. So he didn't want that to happen, apparently, and that was quite clear. And I did not feel lonely at all when he was by my side. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And like maybe that kind of foundation helped me to cope with what kind of struggles that I had, because up to this point as well, I feel kind of weird how people would ask me, like, how were you able to be okay with that? I don't know. But I do believe that there was some kind of spiritual factor into it. There was some kind of foundation that my father had already created. And how I also wanted to be involved with the church community also definitely had some kind of foundation and condition. As my father was also in charge of the church's restaurant, and he was probably working a lot, and that's why he became sick. But that was probably his internal passion and drive and his love for the community, even though he wasn't talking at all. So that's how I felt. I felt that I wanted to respect people who work hard, right? And I didn't want people to be left out. Also, I didn't want to disrespect people who are working so hard already. And that's kind of like how my moral compass started to formulate, because I could see, like, you know, some of us in the community already has passed due to being, you know, somewhat of an offering, right? And I think my father was one of them. But I wanted to really make that the most of it, right? How that meant to me was something that also should like mean similar way to all of us in terms of how True Father has ascended as well, I feel like. And that is how I felt the parallel between my father and True Father, because my ascension of my father, which led to me in Japan, but at the same time, when father passed, I actually came back here, and it was quite bizarre for me because that happened like a month before I decided to come back to Boston. And I was like, okay, I finally am going back, and I wanted to go to, you know, a college in the United States, and like everything was great, and I wanted to like share it with everybody, right? But then everyone's like, father's gone, and I'm like, okay, it's not the best. And a lot of things happened after that as well, I assume, and so there was a lot of understandable things, right, that happened. But regardless, I was very optimistic about coming back here, and it felt like a very new time for me in my life, and I think for a lot of us too in our community, that we are physically maybe somewhat, you know, I don't want to say alone, but like we might be the minority, and I felt like I was alone when my father passed. But I feel like as a child of God, as a child of True Father and my physical father, we definitely have to remember and track back about what Father said, right? And then remember what he left for us. Not just it's not just me. It's all of you, all of us, and he wants us to love each other, and that is the biggest condition that we can do to love Father and Mother. And that was like probably my biggest theme in my life so far, at least. And I think that rings true for all of us and to some extent. So I just feel like always feel like Father is with you. I always remember my father as well in a similar sense, and how True Father was trying to teach us how to love each other, because sometimes he would actually play as a bad cop, if you know what I'm really, this is kind of very abstract maybe, but there were some instances where he was challenging us to love someone for the sake of him, and not just us being just directly worshiping just him, but his vision, which is including everyone. So for me, as a son of my father and also God and True Father, I found out that my name also meant filial piety. It means good son, for direct translation, and I realized that all the things that I've done was directly the same thing as my father has done, and even some more. Because my father was a very artistical individual. He liked cooking, so culinary arts, but he also liked drawing. He also liked playing music, singing, and he was very good at English, apparently. And he actually wanted to finish college, which was his life's dream. So this year, I was able to do all of that and accomplish it. So, yeah, so it was a very victorious year for me, and I have yet to do some more. I'll probably get more and more into my profession, obviously, but I feel so proud of myself, and I hope my father feels proud of myself. I feel that what we do is going to be something similar or the same as what true father, true mother, heavenly parent has done for us, that we pass on the tradition of including everybody, that loving each other is equally or more than just loving one individual parent or parents, and that we're respecting every aspect of them. And I hope that we are the ones to continue their legacy. Thank you. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Parent, Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, true Father, true Mother, Dad, today is Father's Day. We remember all the good memories that we had together. We always had fun times as being brothers and sisters and just fooling around, talking random things, and just getting along and trying to understand each other. I feel like, for me, that is one of my biggest themes, understanding differences, understanding how people feel, and always in extension, understanding how you feel. Because your sorrow and your loneliness always connected with how we felt lonely and how we felt sorrowness and sadness. Although we might feel those kind of emotions, we're going to definitely embrace it and make it into a positive energy, Heavenly Parent, as we go on with our lives as with Mother. We still all have each other, and that is more than what we could have gotten in our individual lives. And we thank you that you have given us such a loving community. Heavenly Parent, please be with us. Please support us. Please give us strength into moving forward in an era where we are not quite so sure about which direction to take. Regardless of what kind of physical direction we might take, we hope to understand that all of the connections we have already is more than enough for us to move forward. And we always would, in honor of you, respect each other as well as brothers and sisters. Today was a very memorable day for me, of remembering my physical father, and also true father, you as well. And I hope that all of us will always be the one to understand your feelings and heart before we even ask you, and that we always have you in mind, and how, with all the things that have happened, we would always keep in mind about your final vision, how you would want us to pursue until the very end of our lives. You have given us a lot of wisdom in terms of giving more value to the community than it was before. I hope that will be and forever will be my moral compass, and many of us as well. And just feel pride in how far we came so far, and pat each other on the back and respect each other. and then create more unity and oneness even more. I offer this prayer in the name son of the Koishikawa family, as Yoshitaka Koishikawa, as Blessed Central Family, Aju.